because I've done it a few times when I'm like 5 minutes into it, I'm like, ooh.
Oh, so many times. Let's see, discount.
Well, we have some people in the waiting room, which is good. I always worry, like, did the link get posted the way it's supposed to? And
Right.
people get very confused with Eventbrite. People on my board were confused. They're like, I don't see the link. And I'm like, it changes to join like 10 minutes beforehand.
Yeah, Eventbrite can be pretty wonky and clunky, and you're not able to edit all the little parts you want to. So I get it, but
yeah,
usually I'm kind of like, okay, at least one person made it in, which means
exactly.
something worked. And then
does
usually
that.
there's the whole, I can't hear you, I can't see you, and then give it some time. As long as one or two people, then it's not us, and just kind of got to go through the motions of people getting oriented there. So,
And I'm glad that it's not, storming out and people losing power.
oh, right, right.
Uninterrupted power supply on my modem and router and computer, but that only lasts for a little while. So
Yep.
the new normal, right?
Right.
Fortunately. Okay, I'm gonna grab something to drink. I will be back. Lucia is the name of the current board president. She just took over. She should be on here tonight as well. Our VP is off in Japan, so she will not be joining us. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
All right, sounds good.
Sounds good. I don't think there was anything else that we had mentioned.
Yeah, Q&A chat, recording. I guess the time, I forgot to check on, like, do they want us to make sure we have a specific amount of time for Q&A, or kind of like as we wrap up, whatever time we have left, we'll do Q&A. But
I think you did mention if David could remind us like 5 minutes or to give us some
right.
predictions.
Yeah. That's a good idea. I was gonna look for one more thing. Let me put the slides to the beginning.
Real quick.
Oh, that's what I was thinking of, Leo. When we do the Q&A, I'll unshare the screen, just so we can just be on screen answering questions. And then I'll pop it back up when we just do the last two closing slides. So I think that should be pretty straightforward. And then David, quick question. How do we have until 8 or 8:30? I couldn't remember.
I would say we aim for 8.
Okay.
But we have until 8:30 is the short answer. And
Okay.
Lucia and I will keep the introduction to, and Lucia, please meet Danae and Leonardo.
Hi.
Hello.
Nice to meet you, Lucia.
Nice to meet you guys. Thank you for doing this.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
And we'll keep this we'll keep the tone of intro stuff really short.
Okay.
Really, I want to try to limit it to 5 minutes. Lucia, did you want to do that, or did you want me to do that? Or
I would love you to do it because I'm eating my artichoke.
And then David, you said 8 including Q&A or excluding Q&A, as in we wrap up and then any time left?
Let's not include Q&A if you
Okay.
need that time. I mean, I don't stretch it out by any means, but
Yeah.
we may find that your presentation is thorough enough that people aren't going to have that many questions. And so,
Right.
but we obviously want to allow it, we want people to feel like they have an opportunity here to get that interaction.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. We have some kind of plans to go with the flow and be flexible depending on how things turn out. So I think we'll be good. And feel free, David, to kind of hop on or unmute and give us a 5-minute, 10-minute warning or something like that if it looks like we're getting close to time, and we're happy to kind of be flexible and wrap up at that point.
And Lucia, they were saying that maybe they could even share like a discount code to the people who are attending. And what we might want to do is turn that off the video, right? Like only people who are attending
Yeah,
get the code. Or we'll put it in the chat because that doesn't show up in the video.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, and then so yeah, that'll encourage people to attend from now on. So
Yeah.
Awesome.
okay. And that's for the store, right? There's nothing else
Yes.
that would be in.
Yeah.
I haven't been to the store in a long time.
Well, you'll have to come use that code too, Lucia.
I know.
Yeah, we've
believe
been,
in
yeah, it's been a challenge with COVID we're still trying to come back from that with just like such an abrupt cutoff. And then now kind of quote unquote, post COVID, things are just different now. Shopping is different now. A lot of people are doing the online thing. So we're trying to get creative, and any opportunity we can get people to just kind of visit that space and reactivate it.
Absolutely. No,
So
it's great.
that's a great idea to bring that in.
We've got George coming in, another board member.
Oh, awesome.
You'll have a lot of board members tonight.
And there was something else I was going to say. I cannot remember.
I want to say it's a delicious artichoke. Just so you know.
Good.
Good.
George, did you want to be a co-host? I see you're on the iPad. I don't know if what kind of capacity you have there.
There's Martha.
I'm trying to get dinner together here, so I'm kind of
Fair
doing
enough.
3 things at once, or maybe 5 or 7. I don't know. Let's see.
Do you need a co-host, Dave?
Yeah, it's always good, especially when we get to the Q&A
You
section.
make me co-host if you want. You can do that if you want.
I'm having trouble screen mirroring. I might have to do this on my phone.
No, you won't. What's the problem?
It's cycling. It's cycling. It's not happening. I don't know what to do. Yeah, I did that.
If it does crazy, just so it doesn't become
So what are your roles at the Ecology Center?
Maybe
Did I-
screen from
What's your role?
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm the community engagement program director. So I oversee a couple different areas and programs, including the program Leo coordinates.
And your program, Leo, is?
The Recycling Education Program Coordinator.
Perfect. Yeah, great.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start letting people in.
Yep, sounds good.
Be on your best behavior.
Hi, Martha.
Hi, I'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Thousand Oaks Neighborhood Association event. We're really happy that everybody could make it. We are really pleased to have 2 representatives of the Ecology Center come and talk to us about the amazing work that they do, but also what we can do in terms of making sure that our efforts around reuse, recycling, reducing, all of that stuff is really reflecting what we want to be doing, right? We had last year, maybe it was a year before, there's a store on Solano Avenue called Feel Good, and we gave them our Golden Acorn Award because of their work to reduce plastic consumption. And so obviously this is something that's really important to Thousand Oaks Neighborhood Association as a group, but we know it's also super important to Thousand Oaks as a whole. So I'm going to go ahead. Let me just let people know that we are recording. I was going to do some nice Thousand Oaks Neighborhood Association thing in the background, but I didn't. My name is Dave Peaty. I used to start this by saying I'm the current board president of Thousand Oaks Neighborhood Association. I am no longer the president, but I am speaking here. Lucia Blakesley is the current board president. All hail. Very happy to have her in my place. So yeah, anyway, very excited about that. We're going to do some very brief Thousand Oaks Neighborhood Association business, but we're going to keep it super brief because I know the real reason that you're here is because you want to hear these folks and ask your questions at the end if they haven't answered them in their presentation. So let me get to it quickly right away. The first thing is that we have a spot on our board available. So if you're interested in getting more engaged with Thousand Oaks Neighborhood Association, we always have volunteer opportunities. One of the big ways that you can volunteer is by distributing our newsletter, which it's pretty amazing. There's 1,800 of them that get distributed to all of the 1,800. Sorry, I don't know if sounds like somebody's trying to say something. Is that you, George? No, I don't know. Anyway, but that's one way that you can get involved and get a little cardio involved as well. So our board member, Elizabeth Skloot, who's here tonight, oversees the newsletter distribution program. So you can reach out to us at tona.board@gmail.com. You can go to our website, which is tona.org, to get all the information. So if you are a Thousand Oaks Neighborhood Association board member, raise your hand. If your screen is up, let people know. If you are here joining and want to just put something in the chat, please feel free to do that. Know that all questions should be reserved for the end, so that we don't have to scroll back through a long chat thing. And so just hold on to your questions until we get to the end, and then you can put them in the chat. So the other bit of news that I really want to talk about for Thousand Oaks Neighborhood Association is that on my birthday, May 6th, get your presents ready, we are having the another Arts and Crafts Festival in Peralta Park. We did it last year, and it was such a great success that we're going to do it again this year. And at that event, we will be announcing who gets this year's Golden Acorn Award, the highly prestigious and sought after Golden Acorn Award. So be there for that. It's 11 to 3, and it's a lot of fun. And it's basically your neighbors and their amazing artwork and craft work out there. Okay, so that's it for Thousand Oaks News. Unless, Lucia, am I forgetting anything? Okay, well, you're muted, but it sounds like you're saying no.
I was just going to suggest you put the addresses that you just mentioned in the chat box.
I definitely will do that. I definitely do that. Okay, so if you're here, it means that you registered at Eventbrite and you saw the bios for our 2 guests here tonight from the Ecology Center. But I'll go ahead and do the quick introduction to say we're so thrilled to have Danae Shorter and Leonardo Mendoza representing the Ecology Center and the amazing work that they do. And I'm going to try to fade into the background and let them take it over from here.
Awesome. Thank you, David. We appreciate that. We appreciate you for organizing this as well with the Thousand Oaks Neighborhood Association. We enjoy having this time to talk about recycling because it can get tricky. But my name is Leonardo Mendoza, and I'm the Recycling Education Program Coordinator at the Ecology Center. I'm very excited to be here with you all tonight. As a Recycling Education Coordinator, my roles include performing route audits, creating social media and newsletter posts, creating education resources like flyers, and tabling at community events. We hope you walk away from this presentation with a better understanding of how to sort your waste and the Ecology Center's role in your curbside recycling program. Today, I'm joined by our Community Engagement Program Director, Danae Shorter. I'll let her introduce herself as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Leo. Am I audible? Folks hear me? Couple head nods. Awesome. I'm doing the share screen tonight, so bear with me as I make sure folks can hear and see me okay. Again, thanks, Leo, for the introduction, my name is Danae Shorter, she, her pronouns, and as Leo said, I'm the Community Engagement Program Director at the Ecology Center. So excited to be here with you all tonight, and especially supporting Leo. Leo's in a new role here at the Ecology Center, leading and coordinating our recycling education program, which is a new addition in our contract renewal with the City of Berkeley's Curbside Recycling Program. So we appreciate the support and the grace as Leo is doing a great job in transitioning into this role, and to be able to support this program and provide education and resources to you all tonight. Outside of supporting the recycling education program, in addition, as Community Engagement Program Director, I also oversee a few other programs, including our Education and Engagement Program that leads our climate equity, climate action work, co-convening the Berkeley Climate Action Coalition, as well as our Eco Store, which we have a door prize for you all at the end of tonight's event that we're happy to share. So I'm going to kick it back to Leo to kind of set up and frame our presentation and conversation tonight. And again, happy to be here.
Awesome. So next, the overview. Yeah, so here we have our overview of what we'll be covering tonight. We'll begin with a background of the Ecology Center. Then we'll move to recycling basics, clarifying what materials go in which cart. Following that, we'll discuss the current problems with plastics, your journey to zero waste, and our resourceful app. Danae and I will rotate presenting, and we'll have a Q&A at the end of our presentation. And as David mentioned, if you could hold your questions to the end and post them in the chat during that time of the Q&A, which is later in the presentation, and we'll get to answering those. Now I'll let Danae take it away for some background on the Ecology Center.
Thanks again, Leo. And I recognize some folks already in the audience tonight. So a lot of folks, especially if you're from Berkeley or have been in Berkeley for any amount of years, you likely know of the Ecology Center. I tend to say that we have kind of 5 or 6 degrees of separation. Somebody always knows someone who either worked here, or a student or a child that worked here, or some kind of history connected to the Ecology Center, which makes a lot of sense. We're celebrating 53 years this year, actually, in the community. We're a nonprofit, environmental justice-based kind of local organization. We serve Berkeley, but also the East Bay and beyond, really founded in the come up and the run up to Earth Day. So as you know, we're celebrating next month in focusing on the sustainability and providing, improving the health and environmental impacts of urban residents. So we are a multi-issue organization. Again, if you're familiar with the Ecology Center, you might recognize us leading the 3 weekly Berkeley Farmers Markets. We have a youth program, as I spoke about, our education and engagement program, where we lead sustainable living, toxics, human and environmental health, climate action and climate equity, and a wealth of other environmental education components and services. We have our Eco House, green home and garden and demonstration home, as well as play a leading role in a lot of other local initiatives, from food and farming, our farmers market access and equity teams, bringing and addressing food access and benefits, bringing benefits to markets all over California and beyond, and just a wealth of other history here in Berkeley. Go to our next slide. While I said over decades, we have a long history in a variety of different areas, for the sake of tonight, just wanted to dial in a bit on our history in zero waste, especially here in Berkeley. We have long been a voice in the zero waste movement, from local to state to federal and national global initiatives and efforts. Just kind of taking a look back, we were again founded in the run up to Earth Day back in the 70s, initiated the country's first curbside recycling program, and remain as the City of Berkeley's residential curbside hauler on record. So yes, David, very proud to continue to be able to serve the community in that way. And then just over the years in all of the movement around plastics reduction, zero waste, recycling. In the 80s, we fought the bottle bill and fought chasing arrows. In the 90s, we led the plastics task force that was a research initiative and effort to really bring out all the impacts of plastics that unfortunately is still extremely relatable and still present today, which we will definitely get into. Some might recognize some of these, some of our old documents here. One of the first curbside pickup trucks. I love looking at some of our archive photos, which recently were displayed out at one of the museums locally. And that kind of brings us to where we're at today. Again, over the years, there's been just tons and tons of different initiatives we've been a part of, but bringing it to where we're at today in the last decade, being able to support a lot of media and movement, the story of plastic being featured in dozens of films and presentations and conferences that are still just bringing a lot of awareness to specifically and especially plastics reduction and overall waste reduction and sustainable living. We've been an anchor org for what we call the SUDS ordinance, single-use disposable ordinance, disposable free Berkeley movement, from campaigning and advocating in the community to getting that passed. And now this year, supporting the city and implementing enforcement here to get single-use disposable plastics and foodware out of our community, reduce our reliance, and supporting local businesses and getting those out of our waste streams. And we're still working. We are one of the co-founding members of the Alliance of Mission-Based Recyclers with our other organizations across the country that are really getting back to the transparent and original root of what recycling programs were meant to do. And we're proud to continue to be a part of that. And upcoming initiatives, things are still happening. Last year was a huge year for plastics and zero waste policy, and we're proud to have still been able to support those efforts. So with that, kind of bringing us to current, getting to what we're here for and what we do best with our recycling curbside program, I'll kick it back to Leo to talk about the basics.
Awesome. Thank you, Danae, for covering the background and evolution of the Ecology Center. We do hope you have a better understanding of our organization and the impact we've played in Berkeley and beyond. The Ecology Center has operated Berkeley's curbside recycling program since 1973. Like Danae mentioned, we were among the very first recycling programs in the US, and we continue to push toward our goals of zero waste and natural resource conservation. We differ from corporate recyclers because we are a mission-driven nonprofit, and we maintain and insist on the highest standards possible to assure that the materials we collect are actually recycled back into the highest end use possible. And we'll get into materials more in a couple slides. I want to mention that the Ecology Center recycling services are provided under contract with and funded by the City of Berkeley. The Ecology Center collects residential, single-family homes and small apartment buildings under 10 units, while the City of Berkeley collects large apartment buildings and businesses. We'll have more contact information for both entities at the end of our slides, but for now, we'll move into how recycling works here in Berkeley and why it matters. So how recycling works in Berkeley. So Berkeley residents have the option between a split cart, which separates plastic and paper and cardboard, or plastics from paper and cardboard, excuse me. But we also offer a single 65-gallon container cart and a single 65-gallon paper and cardboard cart if you produce more. The reason why we have split carts is to keep our cardboard and paper as dry and clean as possible. Plastics sometimes contain liquid or food residue that we try to keep separate because when cardboard is wet, it could lead to molding or pieces getting stuck together, which we do not want. Our trucks do separate the material when loading our split carts. We get a lot of questions if they actually separate the materials, and we want to assure you that they do. So use your cart to sort recyclables throughout the week. Once full, roll your cart to the curb in front of your home by 7 a.m. the day your trash is collected. And we recommend, if your recycling cart is not full, to wait for the following week's pickup. Remember to make sure your cart is in plain view, and to help discourage theft and litter problems, put your cart out in the morning rather than at night. We also want to mention that we have an exemption service for residents who are 65 plus or have a disability. This exemption will offer a special collection service from a location other than the curb. If you are interested, please email our recycling hotline and we'll have their email at the end of our presentation or later in the slides. Now, why does recycling matter? It is not only vital to the health of our planet, it helps the Berkeley community in very practical ways as well. By using your split cart, you help provide good, green-collar jobs. By recycling paper, plastic, glass, and metal, you play an important part in protecting our climate, preserving our resources, and reducing our dependence on fossil fuels. Now we'll move to what materials are accepted in our recycling carts, starting with paper and cardboard. Next slide, Danae, if you can. Thank you. So here you can see a list of accepted paper and cardboard materials, which will go into your brown side or cart. Newspapers and inserts, phone books, office paper, paperboard like cereal boxes, magazines and catalogs, paperback books, small cardboard pieces, and mail. Remember, all recyclables must be clean and dry. One of the most frequent reports we get is from oversized cardboard in our carts. Large cardboard must be broken down and bundled together with string or tape, then placed next to or on top of your cart. The dimensions of bundles should be 3 feet high by 2 feet wide and 1 foot of thickness. Also, make sure you do not wedge cardboard into your cart, as it is a safety hazard for our drivers to unwedge materials to get it into our trucks. Wax cardboard is actually not recyclable and should be placed loosely in your green compost cart. To find out if your cardboard is recyclable, rip it and see if any other coating like plastic or aluminum is attached. And if there is another coating, unfortunately, it is not recyclable. A question we usually get about paper and cardboard is, what about egg cartons with eggshells still inside? Well, that will go into your compost cart. And if you have more questions, as we mentioned, we'll have that Q&A towards the end of our presentation. But for now, we'll move to the next material, which is metals and glass. And we'll start from left to right. So starting with glass, we accept single-use beverage glass bottles like wine bottles and soda bottles, and they can be any color. But we do not accept durable glass. That means broken dishware, glass from your windows, tables, or vehicles are not accepted. We want to mention that mason jars are also okay to place in your recycling cart. Next here we have aluminum, which is amazing because the material is infinitely recyclable. If you have any lids, please put them inside your can and close it so the lid stays inside. If a lid is not attached to the can, please throw it away into your landfill cart, as it is too thin to recycle, unfortunately. For aluminum foil, please form it into a ball and wait until it is a size that is larger than your fist. Items that are smaller than your fist are more likely to slip through the cracks of our recycling sorting machinery and are thus not captured by the system. And again, make sure those materials are clean and dry. And the same thing goes for your aluminum, steel, tin, and aerosol cans. For aerosol cans, only non-hazardous cans are accepted for recycling, like hairspray and air fresheners, items that are not toxic for human consumption. But spray paint and bug spray are not recyclable in our Curbside program, should not be placed in your recycling cart, and are considered hazardous waste, which we will talk about later in the presentation. Now we'll get into the tricky subject of plastics. All other materials are rather straightforward, but plastics have more nuances because big plastic manufacturers have greenwashed and manipulated the recycling stream. We suggest sorting plastics by shape instead of numbers. The only plastic that is currently actually being recycled are bottles and jugs. And here we have some examples: milk jugs, beverage bottles, laundry detergent, shampoo, and ketchup condiment bottles. The ketchup condiment bottle shows the max amount of residue that will still be accepted in your carts, which is no more than a spoonful of food or liquid left in your recyclable material. If you would like to be a recycling superstar, We recommend you soak your peanut butter containers in water overnight so you can save some water and it can come out clean. We understand that other plastics like red Solo cups, clamshell takeout containers, and yogurt tubs are currently accepted in your recycling carts, but we do not want to promote these materials as they do not have consistent markets. As trusted community-based recyclers, we want to be fully transparent about what happens to your plastics, when plastics recycling can work, when it doesn't, and why plastic recycling isn't enough to solve our plastics problem. I'd recommend checking out our latest short film, The Alliance of Mission-Based Recyclers, Chasing Arrows, The Truth About Recycling, which sheds light on the impact of non-recyclable plastics on the environment. Now I'd like to focus on all other waste, as it's important to understand if it's not recycling, then where does it go? But I'd like to clarify that the Ecology Center is not the responsible entity for handling the disposal of these other waste items. However, our education team is happy to provide guidance and resources on how and where to dispose of these items. The City of Berkeley collects the landfill and compost carts for residential and commercial buildings, as well as recycling for commercial and apartment buildings over 10 units. Here you can see a City of Berkeley collection truck, including, you can see a City of Berkeley collection truck, also including the landfill, recycling, and compost carts Berkeley residents use. To the right of that, we have a current landfill flyer provided by the City of Berkeley. As you can see, with their accepted materials, it includes plastic bags and small plastics, disposable utensils, multi-layer products like Tetra Paks, durable dishware, styrofoam, diapers, and pet waste. Essentially, anything that is not recyclable or compostable or does not have an alternative disposal method, such as household hazardous waste or e-waste, should go in your landfill cart. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now, these are some more examples of what you should not be putting into any of your carts. These items include household hazardous waste, batteries, paints, solvents, cleaning agents, needles, flammables, and any other toxics. These items need to be dropped at specific drop-off locations. Our resourceful app that we'll get into later is a great way you can search where to sort these types of materials. The CCC, the Community Conservation Center, does accept some of these items for drop-off, like batteries. And they also do offer buyback programs for aluminum cans, glass bottles, and jars, and plastic bottles. They also operate the materials recovery facility, which is Berkeley's Recycling Center, where all residential and commercial recycling is sorted. We've attached this photo here, as you can see, of the CCC, so you have a better idea of where it is. The City of Berkeley Zero Waste, Ecology Center, and the CCC all share a lot on 2nd and Gilman. Also included on the right side is our curb alert system. This was created to help reduce contamination in our recycling stream. These alerts help residents identify when a non-recyclable material has been placed in the recycling cart or if there was something else wrong with the cart. I have an example also in person here that you can see. Oh, sorry, my camera's a little bright, but you can see on here what they look like. This curb alert would be placed from a driver or someone on our recycling team like myself. So if you see us in the early morning, you'll know why, and we hope you say hi. And these curb alerts were updated because of Senate Bill 1383, which I will speak about now. California passed Senate Bill 1383, California's short-lived climate pollutant reduction strategy in 2016. The law set an ambitious goal of 75% methane reduction from 2014 levels by 2025. And why? Well, organic waste emits methane, a climate superpollutant 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide when in a landfill. This occurs because landfill provide the perfect conditions for methane-producing bacteria to break down the waste and generate methane in the process. But When organic waste is properly sorted into your green cart and then processed at a composting facility, the introduction of water and air allow for an aerobic decomposition process. The introduction of water and air allow for this aerobic decomposition creates conditions that drastically reduce methane production. This is because the heat generated in an aerobic decomposition process kills off methane producing bacteria, as well as pathogens and unwanted seeds, which makes it safe for you to use in your backyard garden. And if you are a Berkeley resident, you can pick up free compost at the Berkeley Marina. Now, what does this mean for you? Well, Berkeley has had a curbside green waste collection program since the 90s, but some cities are just beginning to instate their compost collection services. SB 1383 also requires the utilization of these services with proper green waste sorting. That means that you should continue to put organic waste in your green compost cart and not in your recycling or landfill carts. And if you are living in a multifamily unit and are not receiving green waste collection, contact your property manager and stop waste. Next, some tips for becoming a sorting superstar. We suggest avoiding putting these common compost materials in your landfill or recycling carts. The common compost in our recycling stream are greasy pizza boxes, wax boxes or cartons, and wet or food soiled paper products. Common compost in our landfill streams are coffee grounds with the filters included, meat and dairy, and eggshells. Excuse me. And that concludes our recycling basics. I hope that brings some clarity on what does or doesn't go into your recycling cart. But now Danae will discuss the problems with plastics.
Awesome. That was great, Leo. Thank you so much. And I think David mentioned we've done this so much that we included a lot of those frequently asked questions already. So feel free to continue to hold your questions and we'll have some time to answer some live towards the end. But I feel like that was some great content and straight to the point for clarity, especially around plastics, which of course, I have the pleasure of kind of getting into. So as I mentioned, the Ecology Center, outside of being the recycler hauler on record for City of Berkeley, we also, as a part of our nonprofit work, are heavily involved in just general zero waste and plastics reduction work that is outside of our responsibility for our curbside collection contract. And that's what brings us to this section. And of course, this problems with plastic section could be its own day-long presentation, and literally there are conferences that specifically just talk about the problems with plastic. So there's lots more to this. That's just a disclaimer that I am not explaining the whole history and story, but just want to kind of touch on it. As Leo said, some of that might be surprising as far as I used to be able to recycle some of these items, or why are these items still on the list if they're not actually being recycled, or what happens to them? So I hope to provide a bit of clarity around that in the next few slides. So problems with plastics, first and foremost, every single part of the plastics life cycle has adverse impacts to our environment, to our health, and so many other ways. Plastic pollution is contributing to the climate crisis. 99%, you can see some of the facts here, which from Plastic Pollution Coalition, 99% of plastic is made of oil, gas, and coal. And just being able to have to rely on the extraction of those materials obviously contributes to, it impacts everything. Plastic is found in the water that we drink, the food that we eat, the air that we breathe, the soil that we're trying to grow our food in. And if you all haven't seen some of the really disturbing reports lately, that is starting to be found in our blood, microplastics. And if that's not enough for us to know that we need to do something, I literally don't know what else is. So there's not enough talk about the full story of plastic. A lot of the talk centers around pollution or consumption, kind of putting the onus on consumers, where we really need to be looking at the full story of plastic. There's a gap in coverage when it comes to the front end of the story. Again, the extraction of that oil and gas and coal to be able to make these materials, transport, refining, production, Our reliance on, we should be reducing our reliance on fossil fuels at the time that we should be doing that. Plastics industry is just ramping up. They're just continuing to ramp up the production, exports. We don't need to look across the water. You can see this alarming image here. When you throw your plastic away, where does it really end up? Yes, it could end up overseas, impacting marginalized communities over there, quote unquote, over there, but it's also impacting our frontline communities right in our backyard, our neighbors, our BIPOC and marginalized folks right here in Berkeley and the East Bay. So it's detrimental in a variety of ways to climate and human health. And we'll get into kind of what do we do about that and really how we got here. So one of the ways we got here, we call it the Collect All Plastics movement. As you can see from that history I provided from the Ecology Center, for decades, we've been involved in different aspects of the zero waste movement, specifically around plastics reduction. The 1940s, 50s, after the Great Depression, we really moved into this buy more era and just really focused on consumption. That has kind of led to where we're at now. In the 50s and 60s, you might remember the Keep America Beautiful campaign that was kind of disguised as, hey, we have a problem. What are you all going to do about it? When actually that was a multi-million-dollar plastics industry campaign funded by a lot of these organizations you see here, a lot of these brands that are the top contributors to plastics production, packaging, pollution, and all of the adverse impacts of plastic that we're seeing now. The Collect All Plastics movement targeted municipal and county recycling programs like ours. Really, the goal was to increase consumer acceptance of plastic packaging. So the plastics industry, we sometimes refer to them as big plastic because that's exactly what they are, just a huge conglomerate with a whole lot of funding, a whole lot of access, and a whole lot of power that you can see over the decades and decades of where we're at now. And the goal really, it just argued that cities should collect all plastics because if you make it easy, you will get more of what is actually recyclable. Pause, that makes no sense. But again, that's where it kind of came from, thinking that municipal programs, haulers, if you collect enough of it, eventually there'll be a market for it. Years and years later, we see that it has severely backtracked from that, and we currently have no markets, and now we are getting all of these materials with nowhere for it to go, understanding that where it actually does end up is detrimental to, again, a whole variety of human and environmental health. There's a lot more to that background that really the Collect All Plastic movements drove collection and export of unrecyclable plastics, even though they knew it was not recyclable. So again, this idea of collect it all, we'll take out what we want, get rid of and export everything else. And as long as it's away, we don't have to worry about it. And you can see there's huge, huge problems with that. I mentioned earlier in the 90s, the Ecology Center led the Berkeley Plastics Task Force and just really dug deep into all of the impacts of plastics, recycling, production, and the full life cycle of plastics. All of that is still very, very relevant today. And the Ecology Center pushed back. We fought the Collect All Plastic movement for a long time. If I had more time, I'd get into some of the efforts we went to ensure that at that time, what we were collecting was actually being recycled. And it involved some of our sister partnership of the Ecology Center in China, tracking our materials and actually physically going over there and seeing what was happening, what were the environmental impacts of what we were sending over there. And at that time, again, this was years and years ago, at that time, we felt confident enough and we're kind of forced into collecting all plastics during this movement as much as we resisted it. And it wasn't until 2000 that we did start having to accept plastics under our contract. The concerns we had moving forward after a couple years of seeing the actuality of what was going on, the markets were inconsistent, they were weak. As we can see, the markets at a certain point for some of these plastics don't exist anymore. And now we're trying to figure out how we, as in the whole zero waste movement, is trying to figure out how to kind of roll some of that back. Collection is not recycling. Just because you collect it doesn't mean it's going to be recycled. Again, there's a whole criteria of what makes something recyclable, and markets is definitely one of those requirements to be able to ensure that it's turned into new products. And that kind of brings us into some of the more current work that is upcoming for the zero waste movement, non-bottle plastics. So as Leo said, bottles and jugs, some people refer to the numbers. Again, for that reason, we do not encourage folks to recycle by number because of how much plastics has changed. Those numbers have not been regulated for a long time. There's some recent policy that we're hoping to see a shift, but people are trained to think that certain numbers are recyclable and certain numbers aren't. And when it comes down to it, like, we just can't be sure of that. What we do know, as your neighborhood nonprofit recycler, again, we got into this business to take what you don't want anymore and try our best to turn it into new products, or send it on its way to be able to be made into new products at the highest and best use possible. And right now, the reality is non-bottle plastics, they just don't have that future. The types of plastics we're talking about flexible packaging, plastic bags and film. They obviously they aren't currently accepted in our programs and haven't been for a while, but if you are not a Berkeley resident, you might see it on different cities or neighboring cities on their list. Tubs, film, polypropylene, tubs and lids, polystyrene, unexpanded polystyrene, some of those other plastics like that red Solo cup that Leo was mentioning, and basically everything else. PVC, super, super toxic, a lot more than a lot of those other plastics as well. Compostable foodware, anything that's not BPI certified. Again, greenwashing has a lot of things labeled as compostable when it's actually not. A lot of that stuff is plastic based, and the reality of it is it's all going to landfill. And we can speak to that locally. Other programs might have other things. The truth is there's not that many markets across the country. We all are really working with similar markets, and we can say that those things are not being recycled right now. Again, it kind of goes back to us having to collect that at some point during the collect all plastics movement. But where we're at now is trying to move away from that. And in this next slide, we kind of get to all of that history, where we're at now, where the movement is going, and what actually helps, what actually works, what kind of action actually will make sustainable and solution-oriented differences. So policy change is super important. As I mentioned earlier, this last year and the few previous years have been a huge years in plastic policy. Some good things are happening between SB 1383, SB 54, which hopefully I might have time to speak to. And again, efforts such as we, as the Ecology Center, are co-founders of the Alliance of Mission-Based Recyclers, and we'll send out some more resources to learn more about that. But as nonprofit haulers, really focused on metrics beyond profit. We're not in this for the money. We're literally nonprofit. So we're doing this because we want to make a better life for those products. And it doesn't make any sense for us to collect things that aren't being recycled, because our overall mission is to improve the sustainability of our community. Highest and best use of materials, again, recycling, the intent of recycling to make new materials. A lot of things are being downcycled if we want to really get into the root of that. And over the years, policy systems, investing in reuse. You mentioned Feel Good, David, earlier. We have to invest in those reuse organizations and local businesses, but also reuse policy. So extended producer responsibility bills, other sorts of ways, which I'll get into in the zero waste journey, which I know we're running up on time, but we should have plenty of time for. And lastly, here on the slide, which we're super excited to be able to support and see, is the City of Berkeley's upcoming zero waste strategic plan. So as we understand it, Ruth Abbey and Associates is on board to help the City of Berkeley develop this strategic plan around zero waste, which we're really excited to be able to support and see the community get involved in, so that we can just continue our efforts of meaningful action to reduce our waste and hopefully our reliance on some of these single-use items. So as we kind of wrap up this presentation and move into being able to answer some questions for you all, we just wanted to kind of end. A lot of that can be kind of doom and gloom, especially when we talk about plastics and just the ramp up of the production over the years, and then also the fight that a lot of movement leaders and folks have been continuously working on for decades. It can kind of feel endless, and if it's having all of these adverse impacts, but there's still a critical need for some of that in a lot of different spaces, then what can I do? And so I wanted to just take a pause and talk a little bit about your zero waste journey. And zero waste doesn't mean no waste, but it means just really doing our best to ensure that we are living as sustainably as we can. That's all we can do. We can do our best. And parts of that is looking at some of these major topic areas. So looking at responsible life cycles. Again, as I talked about the story of plastic, the life cycle of materials and the products we use, think about from extraction to production, transportation, consumption, disposal, kind of look and think about all of that. And there's different areas to get involved throughout all of those things. That's not to say it relies entirely on our daily actions, but it also doesn't mean those daily actions don't matter. So yes, we want to hold big plastic and production accountable. And we can also take local action and do our things in our daily lives that do contribute. Responsible production, I think I saw a quote of all the plastic that has ever existed, more than half was produced in the last 15 years. So it's not that long. It sounds like a lot of time, but the ramp up in plastic production has only been in a lifetime of a pretty young person. So it's not a long time, and that's pretty stark to really think about in the last 15 years. And 91%, which honestly, I think is a little bit more at this time, has never been recycled. As you can see, most plastic is very hard to recycle. Things like extended producer responsibility, there's local and state legislation. There's opportunities to get involved at a local level between supporting businesses and working with nonprofits like us that are leading some efforts and initiatives. And breaking free from plastic, literally, we are members of the Break Free from Plastic movement, but breaking free from plastic, again, it can mean just daily swaps. Of course, plug for our eco store. If you haven't visited on San Pablo, it shares a space with our help desk and resource center, but just going in there and browsing the different options, understanding that there are swaps that you can make and trying to break free from our reliance on plastics, especially single-use disposable plastics as much as possible. A reminder that there is no way, putting it in your cart, putting it in your bin, putting it in the landfill, even that, it all ends up somewhere, and even landfills have environmental impacts, even though we know that's where it should be, that still impacts our environment, our human health, neighboring cities and communities. So we want to be aware of that. And then lastly here, looking at sustainable lifestyles, as I mentioned, there's all the Instagram and social media worthy grocery bags and beeswax wrap, a lot of what we offer in our store, which we think are great. And there's budget-friendly ways that you can live a sustainable lifestyle as well. There's that random shopping bag that got into your house because you forgot your reusable bag. That can also be a trash bag or a dog poop bag, or something to gift somebody with, or to bring things over to your neighbors, using a cloth napkin if you don't have beeswax wrap, or you want to save some use a more sustainable alternative, using a plate as a cover to cover something in the fridge instead of buying a roll of aluminum foil. So the intention of this is just to remind you that the most sustainable things possible are oftentimes things that you already have. And sometimes zero waste is marketed as this perfect lifestyle with all these fancy things. And as you look to the left, even some of those things can be reused. And the ultimate achievement is being able to reuse those things and not to be shamed for having them in the first place. We can only do our best. So I want to pass it back to Leo to kind of close us out with the resource app that we talked about. And then we'll close up this and hopefully have a few minutes for some questions if there are any. I haven't been able to peek into the chat, but yeah, back to you, Leo.
Lots of good questions, by the way. Lots of good questions.
Good.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat as well. Yeah, lots of good questions. We'll get to those during the Q&A shortly. Thank you, Danae, for talking about the problems with plastics and your journey to sustainable lifestyle. Like Danae mentioned, these topics could easily be a couple-hour presentation. So we hope you thought that information was useful. Here we have our Resourceful app, which is an easy tool to find answers to your waste questions. We have a barcode or a scanning code on the slide here. So you could just open up your phone and get your camera out and hover over the barcode, and it should lead you straight to our website. Sorry, again, my camera is blurry, but we want to mention that this is a web page and it's not a app that will be on your phone. But here you can find answers to your waste questions and find out what items go in which cart here in Berkeley or where to drop them off. And it's updated weekly by our help desk staff. And if you see something that's not there that you would like more information on, please give us a call or email and we will include that into our Resourceful app. And we do have a sorting quiz, a fun sorting quiz. Hopefully after this presentation, you'll get them all right. But it's a great place to test your knowledge on what goes where. And now, without any further ado, we'll get into our Q&A. And this is a great time to introduce Daniel Maher, our recycling program manager that's in the presentation as well, or in the call here. And yeah, I guess we'll just go down the list here of questions, and let's see, let's start from the top.
Yeah, can we spotlight Daniel so he can pop in? Oh, I think I can do it actually. Awesome. And yeah, Leo, do you see any questions yet that?
Yeah, so the first question I see from Susan is paint accepted there as well. And so paint will actually be taken into a household hazardous waste facility and that will be the Alameda hazardous waste facility where you would drop off paint.
There are also, if I'm not mistaken, special events. You know, we see that at the racetrack, at Albany Racetrack, where you can go twice a year and take electronics and paint and other hazardous waste. And Thousand Oaks Neighborhood Association will work to post about those, but you need to subscribe to our digital email list in order to do that. And you can do that at tona.org.
Awesome, tona.org. The next question I see here is from Martha is, can we put greenware food containers in our green cans? And like Danae mentioned, it needs to be BPI certified in order for it to be accepted. And our Berkeley currently accepts compostable plastic, but it needs to be BPI certified. It is a little confusing, but it would have the initials BPI with the green logo. And so you need to be mindful and what to look for.
Yeah, and really quick, Leo, on that, that's unfortunately a similar situation that has arisen with plastic. The truth is a lot of that, the composter, Berkeley's composter, doesn't really want those materials. You'll probably see in the next few years, again, this is our Ecology Center Zero Waste Movement hat, not our recycling hauler hat, which we are proud to wear both. But from what we're hearing, it's that they're not wanting that foodware in the even BPI certified compostable foodware in the compost. They're having some issues with how and the timing of where it breaks down. So we're expecting to see some of that kind of be removed from the compost list. So we just recommend trying to avoid that compostable foodware completely because of where we're seeing the market kind of go and where we're seeing those materials actually end up. So
if I can add it to as well.
Yeah.
A lot of it also has to do with some of the deceptive labeling and in regards to compostable foodware. There's so many copycat bags that actually, they actually tint them green to give them the appearance of compostability. And like Danae mentioned earlier, there's a lot of compostable bags that are not truly compostable, but are actually made with microplastics. So in order to not contaminate their compostable stream, rather than take the time to actually look for each individual green seal to make sure they're the proper material, still just discard it, because it's a lot quicker and more efficient to just do so rather than to take the time on a fast moving conveyor sometimes to pull these materials out. So I know the intentions are well, and it's well placed. Sometimes in the course of business, it just is necessary to do some actions like that just to make sure you're not contaminating the entire batch.
Thank you, Daniel. Next, how about tea bags that have strings and staples? So paper tea bags are okay to put in your compost, but if it has plastic lining, or if the material is plastic of the tea bag, it would go into your landfill cart. Let's see, shells, bones, and skin go in green. So those are compostable items. Canned shells, bones, and I don't know what this. Oh, I guess yeah, the skin of the
Meat, yeah, all
the-
food. Most programs at this point, except food and yard waste, that there was a certain point in history where those green waste items were separated, yard waste versus food waste. But in the local program, the city does accept both. So any food items can go in your green compost cart.
I see another question here about recycling plastic produce bags, that there's locations that accept those. And the question is, what actually happens to those bags? So we know that Safeway currently offers a program where they take back the bags. We can't really speak on where they're taking these bags. We know that there's not markets really for them, so we're not really sure where they're taking them. And we can't advise, or we can't really speak on what they're doing with those plastic bags, unfortunately. Did you have anything to add to that, Danae?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good answer. Daniel might have something to add. My understanding, especially with those collection programs, it's a bit different because they're bulk collecting those items. So sometimes they might have a market that collects them because they're able to be source separated versus being put into a single stream cart. But I think your point is great, Leo, is that we can't advise for it or against it because we don't know the actual final destination of those. But when people want an understanding of why would they be able to collect them versus us, I kind of point to that. Daniel, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, there's information where I can say through some historical fact. I've done some checking in the past. They've worked with a company known as Trex in the past, and they're actually a manufacturer of composite lumber and similar products. So while it's not the best method to recycle plastics, it does get upcycled into material that has a longer usability factor than it would be just for, let's say, a plastic bottle that may be recycled 1 week and then of course discarded and found in the landfill for hundreds of years later. Whether or not that's still the case, I can't say. As far as maybe in the last year, I haven't really been as up to date. I do know that if plastic bags are manufactured directly from the mill, they have not touched any materials, like let's say it's coming from the factory floor as cuttings or trimmings, I should call them, and they're not inked, they can be recycled back to the same material. But we're talking about post-consumer, and almost any post-consumer item in general is not recyclable unless in those applications where we're not looking at food grade quality, and composite lumber has been the best market for those recently.
Awesome.
Thank
Quick, before we move on to the next question, I know we're approaching 8 o'clock. David, I just want to do a time check. We'd love to have 2 minutes to do our closing slide, but we're happy to continue Q&A. It kind of depends on you all and how much longer you want to hang out with us.
I'm happy to hang out. So we have allotted on the Zoom until 8:30. I mean, we could go till midnight. We're not going to do that, but I'm going to be here until 8:30. We'll have the video. Just so people know, when we post the video, we're going to have also in the description all sorts of resources that are being discussed here tonight. So those of you busily taking notes, don't worry. If you go to the video, it will make sure that it's there. But I think these questions are great. And so let's stick with the questions as much as we can.
Okay, that makes sense. Leo, why don't we just do that last slide now, so then we can just stay on as long as folks want for Q&A and we don't have to try to save any more time. Does that work?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that
Okay.
sounds good.
We just want to make sure we share our follow-up information for any folks that do have to hop off. And as David said, I know the recording will be shared out, and we actually included a slide on this deck that we're happy to share that has direct links to anything that we mentioned or referenced in our presentation. So, and David, I see that you were helping us out and dropping some links in the chat as well. So we appreciate that.
Mhm. Yeah, so we just wanted to thank you all for attending this virtual recycler refresher, and we hope you've gained a better understanding of how to sort your waste and the Ecology Center's role in your curbside recycling program. Again, my name is Leonardo Mendoza, and I've included my email for any recycling questions you may still have after this call or after this Zoom meeting. For any service requests, including cart repairs or missed pickups, contact our recycling hotline. We have and our customer service representatives will get back to you. We have our number here, Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30 p.m., as well as the email and the link to the resource on our Ecology Center webpage. For any other questions about any of our resources, feel free to reach out to our help desk via phone or email, or also stop by the Ecology Center store and ask us in person. We are open Tuesday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. And the two other contacts here are for the city of Berkeley. So if you have any questions about landfill and compost, you can contact them. You have the number and email. And now I'll pass it back one more time to Danae for our last slide. And again, thank you so much for attending with us tonight.
Awesome. Thanks, Leo. And yes, we will continue to stay on. We want to get some of this housekeeping out the way so that we can dial back in on the Q&A. But of course, we wouldn't be a nonprofit if we didn't ask you all to continue to connect with us. As you can see, our recycling education and our work to fulfill our contract with the city of Berkeley is just one aspect of what we do. And we have a wealth of other programs and services, all of those plastics reduction work, our policy work, our advocacy and community organizing work, our food and farming program, our youth program, all of those other things are an aspect of who it is that we are and how we serve as a resource to the Berkeley community. So we, of course, just appreciate your support, whether it's being able to donate. Feel free to do that at any point. Again, QR code is there for you to be able to put your phone up to the screen. You can put a note in there for our zero waste work to specifically go to our education and engagement team that leads this work. And if that's not a good way for you to support, sign up for a newsletter. That's a huge way that you can support a lot of community-based organizations, is just staying in touch with us that way. Our newsletter is active. We have a lot of great programming and events coming up for the spring and summer around zero waste, as well as a lot of other program areas. And then just follow us on social media. If you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. We're not quite on TikTok yet, but hey, maybe if we get our following up, we'll hop on there as well. And just stay connected with us. We appreciate being invited to things like this. And also, we can only do this with support like you all. So let's jump back into Q&A. Oh, one last thing I do want to share before we hop off. David reminded me, and Leo has mentioned it a few times, we have a physical store. So if folks are not familiar with our eco store, again, it is our office, it is our store, it is our help desk and resource center, the seed library, just a resource hub in general. In the last few years with the pandemic, it's been a challenge to kind of keep that space active. So literally just come by, say hey, whatever you want to kind of bring some life back into that space. We just appreciate seeing folks. And we want to invite everyone that attended tonight to come shop in our store with a discount. So if you go ahead and mention TONA, recycling event, recycling refresher, anything of that sort, say Leo and Danae's name, they'll know who you are. And we're offering a discount for the next week. So if you go in between now and next Thursday, we'll offer you a 15% discount to shop on anything in our store. Discounts may not be applied and all of that good stuff, but we appreciate that and welcome you to come in. We're again open Tuesday through Saturday, 11 to 6. So, okay, my plug's over. Let's get back to questions. And again, we're happy to stay on through 8:30 and we'll continue to answer answer any questions folks have.
Awesome. Thank you, Danae. Another question here is asking about why yogurt plastic containers, can they be recycled? So they are accepted in our Berkeley recycling currently, but as we mentioned, we don't want to promote materials that don't have the best markets or consistent markets. And currently tubs don't have a consistent market. So that's why we are advising to sort bottles and jugs. Let's see here. What can I do with the blue plastic that NY Times is wrapped in? Here in Berkeley, that would go into your landfill cart. If something clean like egg cartons could be placed in either compost or recycling carts, so clean egg cartons can be placed in your recycling carts.
And should. The question being which is preferred. Cardboard is good, has pretty stable, consistent markets as long as it's clean and dry. The preference is definitely to recycle cardboard. Cardboard is only good in compost if it has food material on it. Composters they want that nutrition. So if it doesn't have food on it, they don't really want that. And the default is if it's wet, sure, put in the compost. They really don't want that either, but it's better than the recycling. So hope that answers that.
Another question we have here is new clover milk cartons that are plant-based, are those compostable, recyclable? So I believe the new clover milk cartons are multi-layered Tetra Paks. So they have cardboard as well as a plastic lining, and multi-layered materials cannot be recycled or composted or aren't compostable as well. So they would need to go into your landfill cart, unfortunately.
And we wrote a blog about that. I just dropped it in the chat, so it goes into a little bit more detail about that item.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question about, so when a mistake is made, and by a mistake, I mean for the past 5 years for me, and I've been putting milk cartons in the compost, like what's happening? How much have I screwed things up?
You know what? First of all, the first step is to not shame yourself. Like, as you can see, this stuff is complex. I mean, we have a full paid staff, and I still, at my level, have to call Daniel and ask Leo and Martin, like, is this still on the list? So number one, don't feel bad. Number two, something to specifically answer that question, depending on the stream, for example, compost, the reason we don't want things that are not accepted or don't have the markets is because it ends up being expensive to sort out, because it ends up going to landfill anyway. So when we say something like it's expensive garbage, same thing for compost or recycling. For something that should have gone in the landfill to get picked up, to get put in the truck, to be transported to the center, recycling or compost center, to have to get filtered or sorted out and then put on another truck to be taken to the landfill. That's so expensive when it could have just been placed in the landfill to begin with. And so things like the milk carton in the compost, they have to filter that stuff out and they send that to landfill. And again, for the same reason, the environment and economic impacts of that are not great, but that's just what it is. Now you know, put it in the landfill. And one of my favorite lines is, when in doubt, throw it out, as in landfill. If it takes you more than a few seconds and you're at your bin, if it takes you more than a few seconds to try to decide what cart it goes into, always put it in your landfill. I know it feels yucky to put things in your landfill, but ultimately that's the best thing for it, because it goes straight there, and then you don't have those other environmental and economic impacts of it going to the wrong place. And that's what we call wish cycling, is just putting it in one of those bins, hoping that it actually is recyclable or compostable. But if you have a doubt about it, if it takes you more than a second or two to think about where it goes, put it in the landfill. I promise you that's the better option for it. Hope that answers.
So helpful. Yeah.
Great question. So next one is, does aluminum foil and containers need to be clean? We would like all recyclables to be clean and dry as much as possible, but the rule of thumb is less than a spoonful of residue, food or liquid on the material. So that goes the same with aluminum foil. to try to keep it as clean as possible. And the next question on that is the wax on wax boxes made of petroleum? If yes, then is it still allowed in the compost waste stream? I'm not too sure about that question. Would any of you, Daniel or Danae, like to speak on that?
If it's too difficult to identify, they're going to pull it out. And in a lot of cases, even cartons that may actually be perfectly compostable, if it looks too much like a run-of-the-mill container, they're going to pull it out. So more likely, it's not going to go through the process that you intend.
Thank you. The next one is excellent presentation. Why is El Cerrito's Recycling Center so customer friendly and fun while Berkeley's is not? Well, I have been to El Cerrito's Recycling Center. It is an engaging center. Not too sure how to answer that, but we do have tours that you can come and tour the recycling facility with the CCC or with the Ecology Center, and you can take a look around how things are sorted, which is really interesting. Let's see here.
I could also add to that.
Mhm.
I mean, it has a lot to do with the site being built, in the early 70s and kind of repurposed along the way. So it's not really focused on the customer experience, but the city of Berkeley is actually going through the process now. They're doing the environmental impact reports, and they're actually looking into a site rebuild. And I believe it's going to be a lot more focused on the customer experience after the rebuild is done. So they actually do have the corner of 2nd and Gilman kind of laid out in a fashion where it's going to be a little bit more open and have a lot more educational opportunities there. So I would say look to the future. I mean, sometimes it's just, working what we have and, just kind of tailoring the experience as it goes along. So I would say let's see in the next 2 years.
Yeah, that's exciting. Let's see. Let's see. Milk cartons we talked about. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I see this question from John Z about the website and your labels are not consistent online, shows yogurt tubs, lids, etc. as acceptable. Great point. You are not wrong. That is kind of what we were trying to speak to in this presentation of our different hats that we wear as the Ecology Center, as a nonprofit zero waste movement leader. As Berkeley's curbside hauler for the city, we do not regulate the list. The city tells us what we have to accept, and we have to accept that. As the Ecology Center, knowing what happens to these materials as a nonprofit recycler, we want to be transparent about where those items end up. And that's why we provide this guidance of only put what we know has strong, stable markets and is actually being recycled. The truth is, those other items are not being recycled right now. They don't have strong markets. They often, most likely, will end up in the landfill. Yes, they are on our list. Our upcoming and current work is to try to get those removed from the list so that they're not on there, so that we don't have to collect them. But the reality is they are currently accepted in the program. We do not recommend putting them in your curbside cart because they are not currently being recycled. It's uncomfortable for us to have to say that. The city might not love us for having to say that, but the truth is that's where we're moving in this movement right now, is trying to get those non-bottle plastics removed from not just our list, but all cities across the country are looking to do similar work, because that's just the reality of where plastics are right now. Daniel, I don't know if you have anything to add. I'm trying to be as straightforward as possible.
It dovetails into the whole milk carton mix, where it hasn't been recyclable for a long time, but it's basically how these municipalities craft their contracts with their providers and their vendors. And so let's say it's now Blossom Valley, but they were actually required to accept these cartons as part of their contract, knowing well that they couldn't recycle them in their program stream. And so for, I think it was a 5-year or 7-year contract, that's what the going message was. Please place your milk cartons into your compost container, knowing well that they weren't going to be able to accept them. So that's just, like, I saw somebody put in here, there's politics. Yes, there are. There's definitely gonna be some politics in the mix, but sometimes they make these decisions thinking let's take the problem away from our constituents and our residents, and maybe help by getting rid of it out of their trash stream, because of course everything's based on the cost of a trash can nowadays. We have to look to that.
Thank you. Let's see. I saw a question about masks and gloves. Those are not recyclable. Those would be placed in your landfill cart. This question, I'm confused about whether a food container has a plastic lining and can't go into compost. How can I tell if there is a plastic lining? So you can rip the material and you should be able to tell that it is multi-layered and that it's not just made up of one material. And if that is the case, then it will go into your landfill cart. Did you say that we could put can lids into the can, but not loose in the bin? Yes, so lids need to be inside of a can. If they are loose, you want to place those into your landfill cart, as it will be too thin to be recycled. But if you can find another can to put that lid in, then that should be done. Let's see. Where do our plastics go for recycling? And where do our plastics go for recycling when we put them in the blue cart?
We'll kick that to Daniel.
Uh-huh.
And unfortunately, I'll probably be about as knowledgeable as anybody on this panel. So there was a time we've actually had a team that actually traveled to China when it was still allowed there. So we could actually trace it from the origin, from the curbside of Berkeley to the King Fong recycling plant in China. But unfortunately, with the changes that China's made in not accepting a lot of these materials because of illegal recycling centers popping up everywhere and the pollution that was creating a big issue with China, they've closed that down. And ever since then, a lot of third world countries saw that as an opportunity to probably increase their productivity and get into some of the industrialization of some of their countries. So a lot of them thought they can take on this task, and it's monumental. It's a huge amount of material that's going there. And so now they're getting inundated. And so it's kind of getting pushed around in different countries. But quite honestly, we can't say where it's going anymore. And that, of course, is something that keeps us up at night, because how are we going to provide, a true transparent map of where these materials are going and honestly say that we're doing the right thing when it's basically in our mission to make sure we keep things in the highest and best use category? So how can we promote it? We can't. It's out of our hands, unfortunately. So sometimes we have to throw it to the winds and expect that the city's doing their part, the contractors are doing theirs, and all these third-party brokers in between are following the careful steps that they could to make sure. There are definitely some rules. The states do not allow materials to be landfilled if they're being labeled as recyclable, so they would have to store it somewhere. There's definitely restrictions on what they can do while it's on stateside, but once it gets to a different country, it's just about anything goes. I know there's some studies that are still going on. I'm trying to find out if I can maybe capture the link in time, maybe to see where, maybe get some answers tonight about where the materials are going. But ultimately, it's wherever it can go at this point, because otherwise, if things back up too much, suppose we hung on to every crushed bale that we had of materials we can sell, it would quickly overrun the property, and at that point we would be out of solutions. So it's definitely going somewhere, but more likely another holding facility or some other place until they can find a market for it.
Thank you, Daniel.
Hope that helps.
Let's see. So going down the line, I believe the name of the film was put into the chat. Is Chasing Arrows. There's a link posted a little bit earlier. You can post another one in a little bit. Some things come in the mail that seem to have a sturdy plasticized coating. With any of those shiny papers, do they go in paper recycling?
Yeah, as long as it's not plastic lined, sometimes it appears that it's plastic lined because it's shiny, but as long as it's paper, passes that tear test, if you can tear it and it rips like paper, even if it's shiny, glossy, all that is just fine to be recycled, as long as it doesn't have any plastic coating on that.
Thank you, Danae. Next one is, so is it better to buy milk in plastic container rather than cardboard? So as far as recyclability, for the milk that comes in cardboard, it's usually multi-layered, which isn't recyclable. So the plastic container would be best, but if you could find milk that comes in glass, that would be I guess the best version of it, but I'd say the plastic container is the most recyclable.
trying to read Helen's comment. Hi, Helen.
And then John Taylor, I believe, sorry, your question was skipped over. Is there a market for the plastic bottles that are
Oh
the,
yeah, Daniel just answered that one.
oh,
Hopefully.
sorry. Okay.
Um,
What about the tops of bottles and jars? Is the plastic inside the metal okay or not? So for plastic bottles or glass bottles, for plastic bottles, you would want to keep it together with the plastic bottle and place the whole thing in your recycling cart. If you just have the top solely, then you would want to have it in your landfill cart. As things that are smaller than your fist are going to go inside of your landfill cart.
And I think that second part of the question is kind of speaking to that, maybe a little plastic ring or something inside of a metal lid. Any small pieces like that in any of the materials is fine. Again, if you want to be a superstar, you can do things like putting your peanut butter jar through the dishwasher and removing the little plastic window out of your mail. But again, like that's not necessary unless something has an overwhelming amount of film or plastic, for example, a box, if it's shrink wrap in plastic or something like that, obviously not recyclable. But if your box has a piece of tape that you use to close it, that's fine to leave that on there. That's not going to interrupt or make that item not recyclable. Same thing, a lid, plastic lid, as long as it's the same material type, keep it on there. There's few items that have like a plastic container with a metal lid. In that case, you want to separate them and discard the lid in the landfill. But if it's the same material type, it's fine to screw that on there if you think it's going to stay. And then I want to address Helen's comment. And Helen, I know we are working together on some of our other climate pieces as well. And we're grateful to have Leo on board. We just got recycling education included in our contract renewal this year. So it's an entirely new program that we just developed and are implementing. And a part of Leo's most recent work is exploring opportunities to increase our accessibility. So Helen's comment is around folks that might be living with disabilities, seniors, or have others accessibility, have other accessibility needs, and what services or what accommodations might we be able to provide. So in that case, I definitely want to capture this, Leo, and explore. We've been looking at carts and our stamps on our carts and our educational materials and things of that sort. Daniel, you might be able to provide, I know, Leo, I think you spoke to some of the special circumstances where we might be able to, for example, if a senior can't bring their cart out to the curb, if you follow up with us directly, we have a special service for that. So I'm thinking there might be an opportunity for us to explore that, or at least kind of learn what some of those needs are and how we might be able to accommodate or address them in our services.
Yeah, so let's see. So we do have an exemption service, and if we have the emails to recycling at ecologycenter.org, and you can mention to us that you have you're either 65 plus or have a disability, and we can provide a pickup location other than the curb. So we have our drivers come to the spot where it's most convenient for you to have your cart, and we'll take it from that spot. We're also looking into getting carts more accessible, so having possible braille or symbols on some of our carts to distinguish the different carts for those who have are blind or visually impaired. We're still looking into the feasibility of that, but we have taken the steps to talk to different organizations and seeing what would be the best way to accommodate our Berkeley residents that are blind or are visually impaired. Daniel, did you have anything else to mention?
Yeah, our exempt service is actually, there's no additional charge, but there are some caveats. We do have customers that we have to travel maybe up 147 stairs, and so a cart would not be a practical case for one of those situations. But if you do apply for a cart exemption, which is actually a replacement from your actual wheeled cart, this is actually a container you'd probably have to source by yourself. It would be a 32-gallon container or less. It doesn't have to have wheels, but it should have sturdy handles, something that can be lifted manually. So if it's just a simple location or a push, we can actually go into backyards and roll them out for you. No dogs or locked gates, of course, not to speak of, but there are certain restrictions and certain guidelines to meet, but just go ahead and inquire with us at our hotline or through our recyclingcollegecenter.org email, and we'll certainly be able to help you with those questions as well and get you set up if necessary.
Thank you. Let's see here.
Oh, can I speak up for a second?
Mhm.
So I see a follow-up on the question with the bottle plastics. So on the bottled plastics with the narrow neck, there's generally a market for all of those, but I was sort of speaking in plastics in general. So I'm sorry, I may have missed that nuance on it. Generally a narrow necked bottle, something that we were collecting historically to begin with, generally has very strong markets for. So that'll be your natural HDPE like milk jugs, or your color HDPE like your laundry detergent bottles and jugs, PET bottles, just about anything that has an opening smaller than the body, that has a really strong market for. Following with the plastic peanut butter containers. If it's a PET container, yes, that's acceptable because it is PET and that's also a sought after material. We follow a particular guideline, like I said, narrow necked bottles. It helps us to kind of define the manufacturing process. So you'll see that a narrow neck bottle is manufactured through blow molding. So it can be heated and melted back into a particular shape. Whereas containers like the yogurt tubs and everything else, those are usually injection molded. So based on the type of manufacturing process allows us to determine what level of recyclability it has. And so that's kind of how we determine it. But I apologize, I was speaking to the generalization of plastics and where their markets were going.
Yeah, no, thanks, Daniel. I think that's a good question. And peanut butter jars, I feel like we have a tendency to call them jars. Technically in the recycling world, they're a bottle. But I think that's probably the limit. Like a peanut butter jar, that technically it does have that narrower neck than the rest of the container. And then everything beyond that is starting to look like a tub. So that has that wider neck. And that's why we don't even recommend looking at that number, ignore it, pretend like it doesn't exist. Think about the shape of it. So the bottles, beverage bottles, narrow neck bottles, whatever helps to describe it. John, to your, I feel like somebody Jane, no, Kathy, Kathy, your point, it was the last question there. To continue to clarify, no yogurt tubs, no 5s, 3 through 7s basically are out. If you feel like you need to think about the numbers, it's 1s and 2s. PET, HDPE is more realistic as far as what it is that we're looking at. But just think bottles and jugs. That's it.
Thank
Bottles and jugs, yes. I think we might have time for 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll maybe pass it back to David and Tona to wrap up for the night. But I know we could just answer questions all day. I love being able to clarify things for folks.
I do see, I think this might be the last one. I'm not too sure about it, but it says, do you know anything about anything into oil technology from the late 90s? It was for turning any organic waste back into a feedstock for chemistry. It was called something indicating that it was heat and pressure that broke the organic bonds.
I'm not familiar with that specifically. To me, that sounds like the current emergent efforts of trying to identify chemical recycling as recycling. And again, in a lot of cases, that's the plastics industry pushing for plastic to fuel technology, which we do not support. And of course, we got a blog for that. So in our follow-up resources, the Alliance of Mission-Based Recyclers, we actually put together a report on chemical recycling. And from our perspective as mission-based recyclers, nonprofit recyclers, and looking at it from the perspective of environmental sustainability and justice, why we refute claims of plastics to fuel technologies, or also known as chemical recycling. I'm not sure if that is anything to do with that, but it sounds a bit like it. So we'll include that resource
Yeah.
for you to reference and see if that might be helpful.
A lot of that fishy language comes back to remind me of waste to energy, which is, what we actually fought for very strongly, and that's kind of what started the Ecology Center and the city of Berkeley working together. It was actually to stop the actual activation of an incinerator on site. The incinerator still sits down the street. It's never seen a day of operation, but we do have a lot of partners, original fiscal sponsorships like Gaia, which is a Global Alliance for Incinerator Action. So we're actually in the area where we're totally against it, because all it does is generate pollutants and more toxic chemicals in the air. And it's not the best use for materials, because of course, if you're generating energy from waste, you're always dependent on more and more waste to create this energy. And that demand just goes up higher and higher. And so, yeah, any type of talk like that always goes to the past. And I think it's just another reframing of the same process, where it's either chemical or heat. It's basically just burning waste, and they're always going to be dependent on feedstock for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for first, for all of you who cared enough to attend, and those who couldn't attend, who are watching this video online. Thank you for that. But especially thanks to the three of you for coming from the Ecology Center. I think, I learned so much more than I expected to, and I've already attended a number of Ecology Center things. Every time I come, I learn something. We will try to answer questions in the description on the video that we post of things that you may have reached out to us for. I think the other thing that's great tonight is that we learned so much about what the Ecology Center is above and beyond dealing with our recycling. It's clear that while it's so important for us to all understand the process and to do our best of our part, it's such a bigger thing. And your role as advocacy in trying to change the world and our policy leaders around this stuff, if we just don't get this plastic produced, that would be really amazing. And obviously that's a huge push. There's just so much money behind it, and you guys are fighting the good fight. So thank you so much. Thousand Oaks Neighborhood Association will continue to try to support the amazing work that you do, to try to support the community doing the right thing, and to push back and make the world a better place without plastics. So thank you all. Oh, and that store is super fun. If you have not gone to that store, first of all, you have an opportunity now. Next week, you get a discount. I believe you said it was 1,000% off. So perfect. Thank you. Go to that store. It is really fun. And I can't wait for the tours of the center. I was just down at the center recently because we had more plastics cardboard than could fit in the bin. So we went down and got rid of it right away. It's super fast and super easy. So thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. And Lucia is our new board president, which we just announced in the newsletter. And once again, I do want to remind people about the May 6th Arts and Crafts Fair at the Peralta Park, where we'll also be announcing the Golden Acorn Award. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it, and good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness, that was so good. That was so amazing. So many questions. And there were more questions than could be answered. And so the great thing is the Ecology Center is always around to answer those questions. So that's a great one.
Good one, Dave. Thanks.
Yeah, that's super fun, super interesting.
Very important.
Yeah. And I learned so much. I mean, some of it's kind of depressing, like a lot of the stuff that I was doing.
I know.
You just throw it away. But it's good to know those things, right?
Yeah.
So anyway,
Thank you.
I'm gonna be writing this article up. It
Okay.
may not be until Saturday. I'm sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. And you had another one you were going to do too. You had 2 articles.
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right. No problem.
Good night, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.